AITA for telling my dad and his wife that I don't regret missing their wedding? My dad married Eve when I was 11. I wasn't at their wedding because my mom died a week and a half before the wedding. I wasn't in a good headspace to go, and honestly, I had already disliked Eve since she was very pushy about wedding stuff and wanting me to play a very specific part in the wedding, to the point where I felt like I was being set up to basically be stuck with her 4-year-old daughter the entire day. Dad and Eve basically harassed me that whole morning until they left to come. They would not let it go. I ended up staying with my maternal grandma the entire day. My dad and Eve were really not happy with me. Eve said her daughter was really sad not to have her new sister beside her that day. Less than a year later, my dad and Eve had my twin half-siblings. They, as well as my stepsister, were told a lot about the wedding and how I missed it and was super sad that I didn't get to be there. They claimed I was sick. I won't lie, it did bother me. In the last couple of months, my stepsister and half-siblings, now 6 and 10, have asked me why I don't act sad that I missed the wedding. My stepsister said I don't act like I'm upset that we didn't get to do our sister dance at the wedding, something that she revealed to me and I was never told about by my dad or Eve. She also said I never act excited when Dad and Eve talk about redoing their wedding with all of us there. I confronted my dad and Eve about the whole sister dance and they said it was something they had planned to surprise us both with at the wedding. But I ruined it. We got together with Dad's family Saturday. Eve brought up the wedding and was reminiscing about the almost perfect day and stuff like that. Dad's family were like, yeah. It was such a difficult time for the family though after I lost Mom and had my life turned upside down. Eve and Dad were like, oh yeah. Op really regrets not being at the wedding and it's such a shame we couldn't help her make it. My dad's family all look very confused about the statement. Eve commented that it was such a shame I hadn't got the foresight to realize I'd regret missing out back then. That put me over the edge and I told them I did not regret missing their wedding. That their wedding was not some big important day for me. Especially not after I lost my mom. I told them I was in the worst stages of grief still and I was harassed the whole morning of the wedding by them. I said if I had really wanted to go I would have. And that the lies they kept making up and telling everyone were disgusting because most people who know me know I had just lost my mom and didn't give a rat's ass about the wedding. Dad and Eve did not like what I said, but my grandparents and aunts and uncles all said I was right. But Eve and Dad said I should have a better attitude and I not only hurt them but my stepsister and half-siblings by revealing how little I cared about the creation of our family. AITA? NTA. Good heavens. Eve needs to get the hell over herself. It's her own damned fault you weren't at the wedding. They could have had the forethought to postpone in light of the death of your mother. To even think that you'd be all, yay wedding, so soon after losing her. To say little of their appalling pressure to you on their wedding day a week and a half after losing your mother is ridiculous. You were 11. You needed support and understanding and to have your father on your side. That Eve is still harping on about it years and years and years later. Wow. Woman needs therapy or something. The fact that everyone else save for Eve and your dad and your young siblings, who have been listening to Eve all their lives, are understanding of why you didn't attend their wedding shows that you are not at fault in any shape or form. It's horrible and cruel of Eve and your dad to hold this against you and try to make you feel things that you won't feel. They don't get to tell you how to feel. I'm sorry that they're carrying on, basically forced you to spill a truth you knew would likely upset them. But it's their own fault for thinking of themselves and their little world and not thinking of how you were obviously grieving. They're holding a completely 100% understandable reaction for any human, not just a child, who lost a parent against you. which is especially terrible since you were a young child and yes, your life had been turned upside down. NTA, and I desperately want this to be a creative writing exercise. Because your dad and stepmom's selfishness is staggeringly cruel. They're trying to rewrite history into a narrative they find complementary to them, with no thought to how it twists a knife in your heart every time. They've repeated this fairy tale of theirs so often. They think they have everyone believing it. Your pain cannot be overridden by their egotistical need to make your sadness about them. Your loss was already painful enough, but your dad made it even worse. It was his job to give your breaking heart a soft place to fall. He failed. You don't have to remain silent. Speak to your aunts, uncles, grandparents, cousins, or whoever you feel safest opening up to. Let them reassure you that you've done nothing wrong. Hopefully they can speak up on your behalf. Your stepsister and half-siblings' pain is on your dad and stepmom. They created the bubble that could be burst by the truth. Of course you were sad on their wedding day. Your mom just passed. I'm so sorry, honey. As you can tell, your story got to me. I know I'm just an internet stranger, but I wish I could give you the motherly hug you deserve. Only if hugs are acceptable, of course. Do what you need to take care of yourself. Okay? NTA. Your dad and Eve are the Oz. You were grieving the loss of your mother. Only a week and a half had gone by. If they were rich, they could have postponed the wedding, even though that would have meant a lot of pissed off guests. But I'm sure they would have understood given the circumstances. I don't get why they lied. Just say you didn't attend because you were obviously and naturally of course grieving the loss of your mom and that you were missed, but that they understood. Way to guilt an 11-year-old. My mom died a week and a half before the wedding. Record scratch. My mom died a week and a half before the wedding. Record scratch. My mom died a week and a half before the wedding. NTA. I'm so sorry your dad and stepmother were and are acting so heartlessly. Op. NTA. Your dad and Eve are unimaginable level assholes. This is almost unbelievable that a father would marry less than 2 weeks after mom dies, even if they were divorced, which it sounds like, and expect his daughter to be okay going to the wedding. And what's with them holding a grudge all these years later? That's insane. Who the hell still talks about an event that happened 6 years ago to this extent? Your dad and SM sound nuts. NTA. NTA. They're clearly living in their own little world of Delulu. It's okay that they're disappointed that you missed the wedding, which was supposed to be the start of their life as a blended family, but they are adults in that situation and should have seen the grief of a little girl being bigger than a wedding. Also, it's a little bit of an move on their part to say that you don't care about the creation of the family. You can still care about your siblings without the involvement of a wedding. NTA. How absolutely traumatizing it must have been for you to have them harassing you to go to their wedding, which is but a party after all. Only a few days after you lost your mother. How absolutely heartless. I am going to say that a halfway decent dad would have postponed his wedding under those circumstances. NTA. 1. Of course you would go. That's a terrible thing to go through, and at that age cake and music wasn't gonna help. You would have spent the whole time crying, and then you would hear them complaining for years how you ruined their wedding. So can't win too. Why are these still talking about the wedding? NTA. 7 years is a long time to be obsessing about a wedding. Do the adults in your family have nothing better to do than talk about their special day? Like most of us remember our weddings, but we are not discussing it every second week. In my experience, people who focus on that stuff are usually unhappy. I would not be surprised if the next few years spring a divorce on the family. NTA. I do not know if your dad is vindictive or clueless, but they seriously at minimum misjudged how you are affected by the whole thing. Same goes for your stepmother, but to a lesser extent. It's Subides to me. She is trying to build a relationship with you but tried so in a clumsy bad way. Your mother died, which is terrible enough, and your dad is remarrying a few days after and tries to force you in a new family structure, which by itself is a terrible idea because the force will backfire and gaslit you. Also, it seems to me your dad and stepmother are really hung up on this whole wedding thing. I would not blame your step-siblings. They are kids themselves. How old are you now? How long ago was it? Also, was your dad even aware of the death and that it might affect you? The way you describe it is as if he was not even acknowledging it. Edit. If this is like a longer time passed and Eve hasn't caught on, she is at least as big of a May as your father. When I wrote this post, I was under the assumption the whole thing was 2 or 3 years past and you are still a minor? NTA. Oh boy, this made me angry, honestly. They are a set of entitled pricks. NTA, and repeat it as often as you need to. It might eventually sink in the atrocity that is their entitlement and self-absorbment. Your mother just died and they wanted a puppet for their perfect new family with the perfect wedding and a free babysitter for their 4-year-old. Happy sister dance between an 11-year-old who's grief-stricken and a clueless 4-year-old. Colossal colonoscopy bag level of Oz. Your father and stepmother have needed a reality check for a very long time. You gave it to them. And well done indeed. NTA. NTA. It's been years. Why are they still obsessing over the wedding? No one cares about other people's weddings when they're over. Normal people don't care this much about their own. They're going to be so shocked when you ignore them most of the time once you move out.
NTA.
NTA. Your dad didn't take your feelings into consideration and still refuses to do so. Your stepmother could be a little more sympathetic, but your dad is the real problem here. I didn't go to my mom's second wedding when I was about 10. About 40 years ago. I never once regretted not going, no matter what my mom said. NTA. It could have been handled better. Sure, but they were pushing it over and over. Plus lying about the whole thing so they didn't have to admit they were the bad guys. Of course you snapped. I don't blame you for missing the wedding. The harassment alone would have been enough to justify that, let alone the fact you'd just lost your mom. And I don't blame you for not regretting it. They've given you no reason to regret it and every reason to prove you were right not to go. Don't let them guilt you by using the kids. The younger ones weren't even born yet. So you not being at the wedding and not regretting it doesn't affect them at all. The older one, I'd suggest talking to her. It sounds like her mom and your dad made promises about you without consulting you and she doesn't realize that. Make sure she knows you didn't know about the dance and it was the adults and your mom's death that meant you missed it and not her. She's just a kid. She doesn't really understand, and only has the adult side of the story. That family has been created over the carelessness about your grief and they still expect you to show love in front of their indifference. Plus, celebrating so close to such a big loss is kind of classless. They should not remember this so often. It's not something to be proud of. NTA. NTA. Eve and your dad need to understand that your world does not revolve around their wedding day. They are focusing on the wrong things to help you heal from your grief and be part of their family. They have created a fictional story rather than dealing with the reality, and clearly your family saw through that. I didn't see this in here. But what happened between your mom and dad, because I get the impression that the overlapping of Your mother being sick and dying and your dad marrying somebody and having babies within a year. It's sort of a messy thing. Being 11 you may not entirely know, but it seems that way to a grown-up. Frankly, I'm proud of you for saying something. I'm just appalled at the audacity of the two of them. Especially your father. But I've noticed this is often how it goes when men divorce and remarry. Their new family is almost made them reborn, like the other family didn't exist at all. I guess he still wanted you though. So I'm so sorry this happened to you, and I'm really proud of how you handled it. Don't be afraid to stand up. Guess you're not anymore 'cause you're grown up. NTA.
If you enjoyed this video, please check out our playlists full of similar content. AmITheAsshole is like doom scrolling for your ears. Please like, share, and subscribe.